What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Talkin Football podcast. This is episode 64. Hope everyone's having an outstanding day or weekend. Whenever you're watching this, I hope you're doing good. I'm doing great because the NFL is back. The preseason just started yesterday when I'm recording this. I should be uploading this on the same day. And we had some really solid games, nice performances. Also, the Hall of Fame game happened as well. So we have a lot of football to break down. But that is for next week. Yes, the Talkin Football podcast will be back with the weekly reviews starting next week with the preseason week 1 recaps. So be on the lookout for that and the return of Dogs of the Week. Now, in the preseason, before we get into that, just so you guys know, if you're new here, I do Dogs of the Week every week. And I usually do fan voting on my Instagram story, which is at Talkin Football Pod. So be on the lookout for that. But I will during the regular season, I should say, be on the lookout for that. But during the preseason, I choose them. I go through and I say, this is the dog, this is the dog, this is the dog. I'm not sure if I'm going to do top dogs yet. I did last year. I'm not sure I'm going to do that again this year. But regardless, Dogs of the Week soon. Very, very soon. Just next week, I believe, is when we're going to get this show on the road. So, with that being said, without further ado, let's hit the intro and get into episode 64 of the Talkin Football podcast. Let's go. Episode 64 is here, and let's get into it. So, as you can tell by the title, because you clicked on this, we are doing fantasy players you should avoid. Fantasy players you should avoid, not draft, but avoid. I did this last year, and I think my picks were solid. I think they were pretty good, actually, in my opinion. So I actually find funny enough that the players that I avoid purposely are those picks are usually better than the ones I'm like, you should target these players, which we did just earlier this week or last week, very recently, with Logan, our fantasy expert. So be on the or check that out after you watch this video. Before we get into the video, let's just show who we selected last year. Who we selected last, or I selected last year, I should say. The 5 players you should avoid. I said Ashton Genty. I hit that on the money. So, I mean, he was not great until at the end of the year. I thought he was ranked way too high, and that's the truth. Rashee Rice, he was okay. Nothing too crazy from Rashee Rice. Kenny Walker, he was okay. He was actually very good. So that was okay. My main concern was Zach Charbonnet, and I think we saw Charbonnet start to take over a lot during the end of the season and into the postseason. So take that how you will. Travis Hunter, I mean, outside the injury, before the injury, he was just not great at a receiver. I was very concerned about that, and that was correct. And then Tyrone Tracy didn't have a ton of production until Scat got hurt, and then he started to get some RB1 or maybe RB2 numbers, I should say. RB1 in terms of the NFL, I think RB2, maybe flex in terms of fantasy football. So this is what we're working with here. This is what I said last year. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Who are the Talkin Football podcast avoiding? Who is the Talkin Football podcast avoiding, I should say? First one, this is like my number one, unequivocally going away from this guy. The other ones, I like. Before I start, I will say this. This list was very tough to make because usually every year it's very easy. Last year was incredibly easy. I was like, Genty, now Rashee Rice, no. This year, it's a lot harder. It's so much harder because there's a lot of guys I'm like, yeah, that's not really bad. Like, there's a lot of solid players, and it's kind of tough for me to figure out who I don't want to draft. But this guy definitely want to stay away from, and his name is Jeremiah Love. I don't trust Jeremiah Love this year at all in terms of fantasy football. I am staying away from him at all costs. Now, if you watch the episode 63, you will know that I said Marvin Harrison is someone who you guys should target in your fantasy drafts. But Jeremiah Love, I would not target. And there's a couple of reasons why. First off, rookie running backs, it's a risk. You're already taking a risk. And I think depending on where you're drafting, whether it's on Yahoo or ESPN or your own app, I think there's going to be a lot of other running backs at that in that value range that you can go with. Me personally, a guy like Josh Jacobs, maybe he has more value than Jeremiah Love. I think if you're able to get Josh Jacobs over Jeremiah Love, I would do that. Me personally, I would do that. There's something about rookie running backs I just don't like. a lot. And I think nothing against Jeremiah Love. I just don't think he's going to provide enough offensively for the Cardinals to be worthy of a third round selection, which is what he's ranked at on Yahoo. When I'm talking about these projections, they're all on Yahoo, okay, because that's what I use. I think Yahoo is a really good app for fantasy football. Right now, I think he's ranked 27th, if I'm not mistaken. That is not awful, but it's not good. I mean, I would not spend a third round pick on Jeremiah Love because you're betting on him being a good player. And I think he will be maybe in a couple of years. But this year, rookie year, I just don't see it. I know he was good yesterday in his preseason debut. I think it's 74 yards on 14 touches, which is really good. That's really solid. But then again, keep in mind who he's going up against second and third strings. So it's nothing. I mean, again, 74 yards than me, but still, let's reconsider when we're saying, okay, we're going to put all of this towards all of our eggs in this basket. Another concern I had that I think is being overlooked by people who are like, yeah, Jeremiah Love, Jeremiah Love. Look at who's on the running. Look who the Cardinals have at the running back position. Tyler Algier, James Conner. Those are two guys that are going to eat up red zone snaps. Those are power backs. They are going to lower their shoulder and punch at the defensive line. Not saying that Jeremiah Love can't do that. He absolutely can. He showed that in Notre Dame time and time again. But they're going to use Jeremiah Love as their third down back, the guy who's going to be on 3rd and 4, who's going to try and get open in the flat, maybe get a 5-yard gain, move the sticks. That's what they're looking for there. I don't see Jeremiah Love having a ton of red zone snaps, especially when James Conner and Tyler Algier are two of the biggest power backs in the league and the most proficiently used power backs in the league are there. I just don't see that being a realistic possibility, in my opinion. I just don't think that's smart. Now, if you can lock in that you're going to be able to get Algier or Connor, I personally wouldn't go after either of them. Then maybe you might reconsider and say, okay, Jeremiah Love isn't a bad option. But until that point, I would stay away from him. I think there's other running back options. I mean, if you go double running back, like let's just say you have pick number 3 or pick, let's say pick 2, and you get Gibbs or Bijan, depending on who's in your league and who's drafting who. At pick, 18 or 19 rather, 19 in a 10-man league, 19, 20, 21, 22, and those in that range, I feel like I would rather go after, if he falls, a guy like Achane, a guy like Henry. I'd rather go after those guys than a guy like Jeremiah Love, who you're really taking a flyer on, because I just don't believe in him this year. It's nothing against him. I think he's going to be an outstanding player. I just don't think for fantasy purposes that he's going to provide enough to live up to what his pre-rank value is, at least in my opinion. This one is going to be tough for me because I'm a Giants fan, as you can tell by the hat. Something is wrong with Malik Neighbors. And I don't mean it that I don't mean it like there's something that I don't feel right about with Neighbors. Other than, obviously the fact that he's coming off of 4 major injuries, the ACL, MCL, torn labrum, and turf toe when he went down. That is obviously concerning in its own right, but I just don't. There's something I'm not totally comfortable with when it comes to Neighbors. Now, if he's completely healthy, go for it. I'm just not totally sure if he's there yet. When I first made my list, Neighbors was the guy I was like, yeah, I'm avoiding him. He's definitely gonna be in the video, but seeing videos of him in training camp, he's looking pretty good. He's moving pretty well. He's, I think, hopeful for week 1. We'll see. And I don't know. It's definitely tough. He has had 2 seasons where he's had a big-ish injury. Year 1, he had the concussion that kept him out for quite a while. I think it was 3 to 4 weeks. That concussion kept him out. And then on top of that, last year, obviously the ACL and all the injuries that I just mentioned, the ACL being the big one. I just don't trust Neighbors at the value that he's ranked at. I believe he's ranked in the 30s right now, which isn't bad. I'll say a disclaimer. If you are planning on taking Neighbors, or if you already did and you're just seeing who this, let's say you already had your draft and you're saying, okay, who is this, who's Talkin Football talking about here? And you already drafted Neighbors and you're like, ooh, I don't think it's necessarily a bad pick. I'm just saying, me personally, I'm avoiding him because when you look at the Giants roster, okay, who are like the legitimate threats on the team? Neighbors and then Scadaboo, I guess, if you want to say that. I mean, likely's not a real threat, right? I don't think he is. Theo Johnson does not move me. Darnell Mooney does not. I mean, he's good. I like him. I love Calvin Austin, Beckham, but do we really think these guys are going to like take up significant targets, or are they going to be like big time players? Probably not. So if you're a defensive coordinator, all of your attention is going to Neighbors. And if they're doubling him or they have two guys on him at all times, you're walking away with, let's just say, 8 to 10 points a week from your possible wide receiver one. I don't like that production. If I'm going and I'm taking a receiver, I want guaranteed production. That's why I highlighted Emeka Egbuka last week, because I believe Egbuka is going to bring more to the table this year for Tampa than Neighbors will for New York. That might be a really bad take come like week 7. But as of right now, I think Egbuka has a better chance of putting up numbers at wideout 1 or wideout 2, depending on who you draft, compared to Neighbors. Because Egbuka is not the only. I mean, he's not. He is kind of like the only threat, I guess. I mean, Irving, and they have Godwin, but I think I don't know. There's something holding me back from Neighbors. I would say I would definitely highlight the injury. I think that's my biggest concern there. And I mean, if you're a defense, you're just gonna look at him and just make sure, okay, is he covered? Okay, then just let everyone go 1-on-1. That's my 2 cents on that. So that's why I would avoid Neighbors. I'm also avoiding Ramondre Stevenson this year, and I think this is a lot simpler in my personal opinion. Stevenson has major fumble issues. He that was highlighted last year. And we do know Josh McDaniels likes to use 2 running backs. So if you draft Stevenson for your bench, if you're in like the 9th round and somehow he falls to you, go for it. He's ranked in like the early 70s, I think. Go for it. But if you're reaching to take Ramondre Stevenson to be a flex, that's a bad pick. It's a very bad pick. I don't think Stevenson is going to be. Well, first off, he doesn't need to be relied on this much this year because of who they added, and plus, who's going to maybe break out. I mean, I think Trevion Henderson is primed for a breakout season. I think it's pretty obvious. And they keep running with. They also ran with Jennings, the 3rd running back there in New England. I think Stevenson's looking at a limited role this year, respectfully. If he can clean up the fumble issues, or if he did clean up the fumble issues last year, the story's different. I'm saying, okay, I don't know if I would go after him, but I don't necessarily think I would avoid him. But he fumbled quite a bit last year, and you're looking at a team that has a really solid receiving core now. I don't know. I'm just staying away from Ramondre Stevenson because of who they now have. You don't need to run with Stevenson. I think Henderson's going to get a lot of the snaps. Jennings is going to get a good chunk of the snaps, in my opinion. Hunter Henry's got extended. You're looking at a pretty good. I just don't think that Stevenson's going to have a ton of opportunities to make big plays. Even in the red zone, I don't think that Stevenson's going to be the relied power back. I think they would rather maybe even throw it to Hunter Henry. I think they want to help Drake May as much as they can. And if Stevenson has the same fumbling issues he's had for his entire career, you're not going to give him those prestigious snaps to elevate your fantasy score. That's my opinion. That's what I think. Sometimes it's as simple as that. This is another one that is going to seem really crazy, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why I think this. First off, A.J. Brown is not a bad pick. If you already took A.J. Brown and you have him on your team, that's a good pick. It's not a bad pick. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's my philosophy. If you have done research or you are preparing for your fantasy draft, you're doing your mock drafts, you should have noticed by now that the middle rounds are loaded with wide receiver talent. Loaded. There are so many receivers. So many. I'm just going to name a couple off the top of my head. Garrett Wilson, Ted McMillan, Emeka Egbuka. Those are all guys that are in the late 30s, early 40s. You're looking late 3rd round, early 4th round if you're in a 10-man. And running backs are scarce in those areas. So in my opinion, go out, get your running backs early, and then get a receiver later. I think that's the move. I think that is a really educated move if you're practicing for your fantasy draft or preparing for your fantasy league. I also think that the Patriots are not built to give A.J. Brown to wide receiver 1 targets. They love to balance it out. They smooth everything. They're going to give Henderson his snaps. They're going to give guys like Pop Douglas. Booty's probably not going to be there, but until he's not, he's there. Kayshon Boutte will be there. You know, guys like Mac Hollins, who they relied on quite a bit, more than I thought. Guys like Kyle Williams, who they're hoping can break out. These are guys that they have, and they like to spread the ball out. Don't get me wrong. A.J. Brown is going to get wide receiver 1 snaps, I should say. But I don't feel comfortable with getting A.J. Brown at pick 20 to 25. That's his range. Honestly, almost all of those receivers in that area. I just don't think it's a smart play because I think you can get almost the same production out of the other guys I mentioned, like the Wilsons, the Agbukas, the McMillans, the Odunzes. I think you can get more I think you get the same, if not more, production out of those guys than you can A.J. Brown. So me personally, get your running backs early, pass on A.J. Brown, and then go ahead and get your receivers later. I think that is a smart play. That's why I'm avoiding A.J. Brown. Then again, you draft A.J. Brown, you did not make a mistake. It's not a bad pick in my eyes. Next up, final player I'm telling you guys to avoid is a player who I was not considering to put on this list. I thought he was primed for a really good season, but then he got hurt. And he's still ranked pretty high. I'm talking Luther Burden. Now, I think Luther Burden, that groin injury, that scares me. It scares me a lot. It really does. Something about it. Groin injuries are so tricky. If one step of the recovery process gets screwed up a little bit, you can be delaying your recovery even more. Groins are really tricky. And he's also in an offense that's looking to take another step. The Bears are tricky this season for me. I don't know how I really feel about them. I don't think Caleb Williams he's good. I still think that he's more. I have this as a short on my YouTube page where I said Caleb Williams is like more of a character than an actual player. I don't know. I'm stuck on the Bears. I don't think they're going to be insanely good. I think where my issue is, look at the guys that they have other than Burden, who is at risk to miss week 1. Guys like Odunze, guys like Colston Loveland, who I think is going to have an outstanding season. Guys like Cole Kmet. Plus the backfield, the running backs, guys like DeAndre Swift and guys like Kyle Monangai. So we already know Monangai gets red zone snaps. It happens all the time. So that already takes a lot of possibilities from Luther Burden to up his score. I also think Odunze is coming in listed as the wideout 1 on the team. Not saying that Luther Burden won't get those opportunities, but I don't know. I think Odunze is in a better position to get those plays. I also think they're going to rely on Coastal Loveland. He was the 10th overall pick. You're going to give the ball to him. And he delivered very much last year. He was excellent last season. Cole Kmet has consistently been a guy for the Bears, for top Bears. I just feel like you're looking at a guy in Luther Burden. At his rank, I don't think he's going to live up to a 4th or 5th round selection. This is a player who I think if you took him, if you already had your draft or you are planning to take him, I would back off. Me personally. I think that's a wise decision. I would back away from Luther Burden and go after, again, the same guys I've been repeating their names. The Garrett Wilsons, despite the quarterback situation, I think Garrett Wilson's a better bet than Luther Burden. Guys like Ted McMillan. Again, Bryce Young he was solid last season, but I would rather have Ted McMillan than Luther Burden. And then Emeka Egbuka, I think that goes without saying. And on Yahoo, I think they're 3 ranks apart, like Egbuka and Luther Burden. Again, I will say this, actually, change the subject a little bit. If you're a player who did not get Luther Burden, it might not be a bad idea to consider buying low on him come week 1 or week 2. I do think that there's something there, maybe, and like I do think there's gonna be a week in the season where he goes off. Outside of that, I don't see a lot of potential for Luther Burden here. I would stay away from him. I think there's a lot of other value on the board outside of Luther Burden, which is why I'm staying away from him this season for fantasy football. That is all I got for you guys today. It was a little bit shorter of an episode than I usually have, but honestly, it's okay. I hope you all enjoyed. Be sure to be on the lookout for new content on both Instagram and YouTube as we slowly chug towards the start of the NFL season. Thank you all for watching. This is Talkin Football, and that's what I got to say about that.